Well, I just set it up to record, and unfortunately, the majority of this is going to be missing. So I did set up my charts for a tick. Let's see here. Okay, so let's open this up. Tick is opening at plus over 800. I believe we'll probably actually get a 1,000 tick reading. Okay, so a lot of times when people will see that 1,000 tick reading, they'll think automatically, I need to fade it. Okay, now I don't think that way. The market can continue driving. It's a thin holiday. Where I will be looking to take a trade. Okay, so this right here, excuse me, this is zero tick. It doesn't straighten up the line like the other one did. I wish it did. But if you'll highlight zero tick, the first time the tick comes down, right, and on a trend day up, this is a high odds trade. The first time the tick comes into zero, it generally gives a very nice long setup. If you want to see an example of that, we can go look at Friday's trade here real quick to see how that would look, right? And by the way, the market can push higher for that entry by the time we get that zero tick, right? So let's look at Fridays really quick so we can see that live. Okay, so let's get this squeegee out of the way here. Here's the, I'm going to try and put this line here will be better. Here's the zero tick. Okay. I would say this right here, I'm not sure if we actually got a zero tick, and I wait till I literally have a zero tick. So it was either here or here, right? So if it's here, that gave you an entry right here approximately, which was the high of the day, okay? And we didn't gap, by the way, on this, which is interesting. We did not gap, and this is a 5 minute. Usually we open much stronger like we are today, but the first zero tick reading came in right here. The first negative reading came right here, which corresponded with this. Either way, you took relatively little heat, right? From here it was 1810 down to 1808.50. So a point and a half of heat off the first zero tick. And that's generally what I'll use for a trade entry. And if you were patient, right, in very short order, you had a beautiful rotation for 8 to 10 points up. Okay, so today we're going to look a little bit different because the gap is so strong. So first of all, you'll see we have almost no downside. And I want to do something here real quick. There we go. We're having a doji off the open, right? There's been almost no selling out of the gate. If I look at Apple's chart, let me take a look here real quick. Okay, Apple hasn't backed off, and I would have a chart on Apple. We're up 15 and three quarters, right? Because that's pretty much going to dictate the day. We were up 3% pre-market. Anything above 3%, anything above the overnight highs for Apple, right, is going to push NQ. NQ is heavily weighted in Apple, so it's going to have a massive influence on the push. And Apple could easily push to 572 today, in my opinion. If not today, certainly by tomorrow. So I have my eyes on it. Obviously, I'm watching. So the scenarios for today. Okay, so far we failed to even get half gap, which again we identified as this area right in here. So without half gap, and we sit here long enough, 23.75 right below 24 and right into initial resistance, right? So what do we need to look for a short on the upside, right? Well, there's not a lot that I can see that will give me a short, right? The next zone above this will give me up here at 1832, which will be approximately from where we're trading right now, 1821 will be approximately a 10, 11 point move. I will try a short, particularly if I can get tick divergence back here the first time in. I will not give it a lot of time. Let me circle that. I will probably take a short on first touch here. I will not give it a lot of time to work. If it doesn't work in under 20 minutes, I'll probably cover and just take the loss, okay? Trend days up tend to be trend days up. This is doing it the hard way, right? To the long side, Again, I would either like to see a zero tick or an attempt to rotate lower from the high, which right now looks like we're at 1822 and change, which means I'm looking at the 1815 area, which will bring me gap fill, right? So if I get gap fill, anyways, I'm a little bit concerned, but that's the first place I'll look for a rotation for 2 points up. It'll give me a nice stretch. I would rather see it, I would probably rather be aggressive at the back of this area right here. And what would be really nice actually is if we can just get up here and rotate back down onto a zero tick reading in here for a move back to the upside. The other option is that we've gapped and that nothing else is going to occur, and we end up with a day of balance, which looks something like this, right? We just kind of come in and we do this all day long. Okay, that would really suck, but would not be uncharacteristic of a Christmas holiday, right? And right now I'm looking at Apple. Apple's backing off just a hair. It's only up 14.5. And again, there's no direct correlation except that it's so heavily correlated in NQ that it makes it very hard for NQ to advance significantly without Apple, at least until it detaches. And right now it's very attached and has been for the last couple of weeks to Apple's performance. Geez, I'm trying to see if there's any other scenario. Oh, I covered the downside. Again, let's look at the chart just to cover the downside scenario of what needs to happen to really get me bearish, right? So a couple of things. First of all, on tick, I want to see tick get negative and stay negative, right? So far, no luck in that, and we've barely pulled back. We haven't had big sellers out of the gate, right? Second thing that I want to see on the downside would be that we get, first of all, below Friday's high and Globex lows. So we have to get below this. And my scenario there would be like this. We come in, we test gap fill, right? From gap fill, we come back up and test and fail here. That would encourage me that there's a possible downside solution, downside trade. Also, another possibility there, right? If we come into gap fill, which I would not expect, if we come into gap fill, right, and we do get below and they didn't make a final push back up into Globex highs, right, I might be willing to take a short there back to the downside, okay? But what I really need to see to get bearish, right, is this. And a lot would have to happen. The white zone would still have buyers in control. I can tell you right now, if we get lucky enough to get down there, I will take a trade to the long side down there. Now remember, the market, right, in my style of trading can do this all day. Okay, and I will constantly take these trades, right, as they set up to the long side. Even though the market's down, I've had repeated days, guys, if y'all been with me or follow me even for a short time, where I'm repeatedly getting good trades to the long side on days that were trend days down, right? And then if I get it set up properly and we can get a big enough extension, right, this will bring us from 1820 down to 1802. That'd be a 20-point extension. Would not surprise me to see from 1802 or 1800 a rotation back right back into 1810 for a very nice long side trade here if you have trailers, right? So again, I think this is the lower odds situation. You see people are trying to already step in. Let's go over and look at NASDAQ for a moment in the NASDAQ chart here. And again, if you want to drop off and start trading, go ahead. I don't have any setup for myself where I need to drop off. And so I'm just going to continue going if that works for y'all. See here. I have it here. Yeah, I did. So if we look at the NQ daily, so as you can see, we gapped right into resistance and we did find responsive sellers. So the first thing we have to do is get above this 35.59, 35.60 area, right? So we held right to the point, but we did not get down to the prior support area. Globex low is all the way down here at 35.41. So obviously the short scenario there, right? What has to happen first? Well, first we have to get below Globex. We have to have half gap, which is approximately 35.56. Going to call it probably right at the back of this zone roughly is half gap. You can obviously take a fib tool and measure the half gap from this close to the high here, you'll get an idea of where the half gap is exactly. Okay, gap fill. We have to get below gap fill to have a bearish day. We'd have to go negative, right? So it would have to look like this. Somehow we'd have to get down here and then push down into gap fill and not get any responsive buyers. However, if we can get below gap fill, right, you probably have a lot of people trapped up here. And so scenario would be a push back up into Friday's highs, right, and or Globex lows, right? A backside test of that might bring us lower, right? I would expect responsive buyers into the white zone the first time. That's going to be a big stretch from 35.57. That's going to be a 37 point stretch. And if you go back and look at your other days, 37 point stretches are pretty big on NQ. We've had bigger, but again, considering the news, I don't know how the heck they're going to get this scenario to go unless a hedge fund comes in a thin day or a mutual fund and decides that now's the time to start liquidating. Hard to see that scenario going. So let's look at the upside and what that scenario looks like real quick. On NQ, we've clearly not even gotten half gap, sign of strength, right? And we're about to go in and break new highs. So on the upside, again, I'm going to look for a zero tick as a possible entry into NQ. Again, I'll be keen off of ES for my NQ entry in that case, right? First extended target would be up here at 35.68. Might stretch a little bit down to back to 35.70. I'm not sure I'm willing to take a short on NQ today, quite frankly. My next extended target is way up here. If we get a move somehow way up in here, I'm probably willing to try a short up here. But man, it will be scary. It will not be pretty. It will not be easy. Okay, so I'll have a 10-point stop on this thing, right, which will bring me right back to 36.10 area. And I'm not sure I'll make any money. It could be just to take the trade. If it comes in the last hour, I will not take this trade, by the way, at all. Not interested. We're probably going to close out on the high of the day if that's the case. Just not interested in that scenario. Also, on ES, a bit of freestyling. If we get over to ES and we start trading sideways, excuse me. If we get over ES and we get up here between these two targets, you'll notice I left a lot of space here. So one thing you got to keep in mind, all these targets above this Globex high, right? We've never traded. All of this area from here up, all of this is just based on my calculations, okay? None of it is based on actual facts or knowledge that I have. So I just, my calculations are usually pretty good. As you see, I nailed the NQ high for this morning last night. Really, actually, I got the pre-market. We ended a tick in front of this initial resistance zone. I'm pretty good at finding them, but you got to keep in mind there's nothing to lean on up here besides the calculation. So I would look for tick divergence to help me. But how you approach that from a risk standpoint? Let's talk about that for a second. How do we approach this from a risk standpoint? From a risk standpoint, right? You've got to decide before we get up here. I'm going to take these zones and I'm going to take these trades with my normal risk parameters, right? And I'm all right if I get stopped. Or you're going to say, I'm going to wait for a rotation lower where the zones have already been tested and I'm more comfortable taking a trade there. But you can't look at this zone as going, this is as high in odds as other zones as if we had traded up here before, right? They're good odds, but since we've never traded here before, there'll be no one sitting there going, there's no one trapped here, right? There's no one that bought here, had the market come down against them, and then had the market come back up here and going, great, this is my opportunity to get out, where you would get a responsive seller in there, okay? The only reason people are going to sell up in these zones is because they feel we're too far extended. But there's absolutely nothing there in terms of there's no one trapped. I don't think there's any shorts, but there's a ton of people still in cash, right? And then, of course, you have the haters, which keep saying, well, we're going to roll over to the downside. Those guys need to come up with a scenario where they have some kind of news or something to scare someone. Again, I will change in a heartbeat, my view on the shorts. If I can see some sellers step in with any strength whatsoever, I'll be patient and I'll wait for, right? If we get this, we get up here, let's say we get here and we roll straight over, right? And we break these levels. I'm not going to chase into any of this. But if I get a nice rotation up with a proper stretch, yes, I will take these shorts at this point. Why? Because now I will have buyers trapped from higher levels and they will help me get out. In addition, if people start to see this thing roll over, right? We've had lots of people coming in from the lower end just wondering, when do I need to get rid of my long positions? Okay. Now, these guys are going to have to be highly motivated to get rid of their positions because they've been so rewarded, right? And look, what would it take at this point to shake you out? If I'm trading, right? Let's just look at a chart here real quick on an hourly. Okay, if I'm a professional manager, right? And this is what my chart looks like, and I have just killed it all the way through here. What is it going to take to get me to go, maybe I should get rid of my position? Well, I can tell you I've been in that position before. I ran a hedge fund, and the first thing I'm going to need to see is I'm going to see this level break. That's all the way back from just a couple of days ago. That's the first thing. That's a huge rotation. We need 70 points down at this point to even get in here, and we'll have to have no responsive buyers in here. Now, if we get underneath this and we start trading here, right? What's the next area that I need to look at that might give me some area for pause, right? We need to get below this area right here, which is below 1700 before I'm really scared. Will I be down? Yeah, but look where I am from the close of last year, right? We got to go all the way back to January lows back here. And if I'm a fund manager, right? I go, okay, so I didn't catch the top. I liquidated 1700, big deal. I've been long from all the way back here. Okay, so I have absolutely zero to worry about. I'm not going to lose my business. No one's going to bail on me except someone who bought up here. And there's very few, right? The majority of his clients have been with him through this entire run. So generating any kind of fear to the downside is going to be hard. Also, if we calculate really quickly, and we will, okay, so we're trading 18, let's just call it for ease of conversation, 1822. So roughly 1730, right? Right in here. 1730 area right here approximately, right? Gives me a 5% correction. This market through this entire run, this is the area where we had possible taper, we had Syria, we had Libya and the whole Benghazi deal. We had North Korea threatening to launch nukes. And I'm sure there was something else going on in here too. We had Snowden somewhere in all this crap as well, right? And we had the government shutdown. None of that generated a 5% correction. So think about it in terms of fear and pushing down, right? We could have a quick push down like we had here, right? We've had these series of quick corrections that are nasty right in here, okay? And the reason why these didn't have any follow through is because we can't get below where the majority of these people are long for the entire year, right? And most of the bears have thrown in their towel, and most of them threw in the towel, by the way, in the early fall, which would put us right in here. So even these guys that threw in the towel late and got long still have nice gains on the year. From 1615 up to 1822 is massive. So I just don't see what's going to cause any fear today, guys. And that's my take. I'm looking for a good rotation down. Let's go back to the fundamentals real quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I'm looking for a today in order to get long. I'm looking for a couple things. First of all, I only want to trade at the zone itself. I might create some more zones later this afternoon based on the morning's trading, but for right now, only the zones that already exist. Number two, I want a minimum of a 6 to 7, let's call it 7 to 10 point rotation down, right? Again, in the zone, but a 7 to 10 point rotation. Tick divergence helps. The only trade that I've called that the only trade that I've called that is not a standard trade for me, at least on my daily charts, right, is if I get a zero tick reading. Let's bring this back up. All right. The first time I get a zero tick reading, I'm willing to take a loss the first time into a zero tick reading with probably a 3-point stop on the first time I get to a zero tick for a rotation higher. That's the only trade I'm taking that's not on the list. And as you see, we still haven't gotten a zero tick. We haven't had the push that we normally have, but if you look, the gap was significant enough where we really wouldn't, right? It'd be nice to see just a constant push up, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet. And I want to see where Apple's trading here again really quickly just to get an idea. Apple's up over 3% again. So again, I have no idea how they're going to get a significant push back to the downside when we have that going on. So as soon as we can get this thing to read zero, if we can get it to read zero sometime here in the first hour, I'll take a shot to the long side. Other than that, 7-point rotations down, put me down around 1815, which puts us all the way down into here. There's really not a zone here. I'm gonna have to think about how to handle that there. But again, I doubt we get it. Apple's already pushing up. I need to look at the other tech stocks and see how they're doing. So that's it, guys. Zero tick will probably be my only decent long that I get for the day. I would not fade this. It's just not worth it. People who faded off the open, that's great. They've gained 2 points to this point maybe, and they've taken a massive risk of getting run over to the short side. So that kind of trade's just not for me. If anyone has any questions, y'all can hit me on Skype or Google. You can hit me on StockTwits. I'd love some feedback as to how the audio was and how the video was on this platform. Again, it was awful on the last one. I had tons of problems. Hopefully it's fixed on this particular chart. I hope everyone has a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys.